And welcome to the Culture Couch Live. Was Murph and Emil. How are we, boys? Good?
Hey, Rosie.
Good. All good. Now, I think we've got to start off by a few congratulations. The Broncos in the Women's Rugby League had a grand final win. The Melbourne Vixens, which was fantastic. And then, Melbourne Storm have created an amazing – well, the two teams, I mean, the Tigers and the Storm are going through an amazing patch of success. So congratulations to all those people and associated, not just the players, but everyone associated. As we know, it's a whole of club effort to win a premiership. So well done to all those teams.
Fantastic. Yeah, a difficult year, and it's getting through COVID and all the challenges associated with it. It's been a wonderful effort from all of those teams.
Yeah. And look, it's actually not a bad segue into the first question. It's from Jeremy, who runs a small medium business. And you touched on it, Murph, COVID and the clubs being in the hubs and all that sort of stuff. His question is, do leaders have to change some of their role coming out of this COVID period? But I guess particularly referring to Melbourne with the lockdown and so forth. So I might throw to you first. As a CEO of a company that's obviously been through it and seen it, are you having to change anything in your leadership team or your leadership style coming out of it, or what are you most aware of?
I don't know if I need to change my leadership style. I guess I need to be cognizant of the fact that I'm just sort of talking about it this week with the team and looking at the annual leave balances of the team themselves. And obviously most Australian employers give their employees 4 weeks holiday per annum. And given the first lockdown started in early March and most people just come out of their summer break, we're talking about people having 4 weeks leave up their sleeve. And I think it's important to look at it. Like I was talking to a company came in yesterday and they were sort of a bit perplexed about the fact we had a grand final weekend and the cup weekend back to back, and they were concerned about the downtime of staff. And I couldn't think of anything like more reverse than that. People have been under pressure, under stress, and I welcome more opportunity for the team members to take a break, because there's a lot of data that supports the fact that post people actually having a full checkout, that you get more output from those individuals post that time period. So I think it's important to identify how you structure breaks without impacting the continuity of the business and ensuring people can take those breaks. So I think even probably what COVID has done as well is allowed people to be more accessible. Now they're remote. And being more accessible means it's really hard to check out. I mean, I'm actually on a day off today again, but I've been on call since 7 a.m. this morning because I'm accessible. Now you got to make sure the team members are aware that, there's got to be a means for them to try and shut off completely and make sure they aren't available. And even you as the leader need to make sure you're not looking at when people have got time off and you're not even calling them yourself. So lots of different factors, but making sure people have the appropriate breaks so they can reset their mental health is really important.
I think, Murph, on that, we're starting to hear a little bit about this work from home, but where's the break? I'm not getting on the train, I'm not going to work and then reading the paper. I get out of bed and sort of I'm in my office. I walk down the hall and I'm sort of in my office. So I think what Woz is saying is particularly relevant. And I know we talk about leaders getting out of the head into the heart. Is it even more important now for leaders to live in that space, the heart space, to really understand what their employees have been going through and will continue to go through?
Yeah, 100%, Rizzy. I think one of the critical things, and my wife, every morning she jokes and she gets up and says, "What are you going to do today?" And I look across at the computer in the bedroom and say, "I'm going to have a shower and walk across there." So I think as people start to transition back into the office, I think we need to be gentle. And probably I've not always been the person that promotes gentle the most, even, but the fact is, I think we need to have a lot of empathy, and we need to put in place systems that allow people to be able to talk to each other and talk to the leadership team and the CEOs so that we can stay in touch. Reason I have just got off a call with the CEO, and he was talking about some of the mental health pressures that have been on his team. So from my perspective, I think it's really important that we that we put in place structures that allow the team to be able to communicate easily with each other, and we allow them to transition back into the workforce. So it's not just bang, off you go. Because as Warren says, I think people have been working harder during this period. And this isn't just for Melbourne. This is people all around the country, probably overseas. When you're working from home, you just don't break. You don't get away from it as much as you did, and you miss the contact with people. So allowing people to transition back in and to be gentle and take the time, not just go bang, you're back to work. So I think that'll be a really important thing for leaders to sort of step back and sort of consider that as people come back.
Emma, I'll ask you slightly differently, because I think we're seeing through this period the CEOs that have got really good cultures and really good behaviours and have really connected and probably done some of the things that Woz and Murph are talking about. What are the dangers for that CEO that hasn't created a good culture? You know, because that's been really exposed through that period. And I suspect they're going to have to make significant change, aren't they?
Yeah. The first thing I wrote down as you asked the question was engage with the team, ask questions, listen more, and speak last. So everyone will have an opinion on what it should be like, right? What they will want the new workplace to look like. So the danger to your question is that the leader sets up structures that they think are going to be good for the team without listening first to the team. And I remember when I started working with Jazz many years ago, Jared challenged me to use a term called, what do you reckon? So I would ask, if the team asked me a question, I fell into the pattern and habit of asking, well, what do you reckon? And it became so habitual, I actually got a silicone wristband and put what do you reckon on it to remind me to keep asking the team, what do you think? What do you think? What do you reckon? And I think that's the most important thing leaders can do now, because everyone will have an opinion of what they will want it to be. And they're probably also talking with each other as well. So John and Jane are having a chat going, I think we should start Mondays with a huddle or whatever it might be. Get them, ask the question, engage, and then listen and speak last.
Yeah, and that's probably answered the question in a different way, because the autocratic CEO that's really struggled with their culture during this period is going to find that really difficult to do, aren't they? I mean, we would recommend that all the time. So to my point before, Emil, they are going to have to make significant change, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really,
100%.
And what do you reckon, Rizzy? Like if you're a football coach and everyone's coming back in and they've all been away for a while, and how would you manage it?
I think you've got to have the discussions. You can't just think get everyone back and depending on the timeline and where you are, it's different. You have to. That's the first thing, Murph, is the acknowledge that it's going to be different, and then just don't presume things. I think poor leaders just presume things that they've all had a great time, they've been at home with their family, blah blah blah. That may be the case for 5%. It might not be the case for 15%. And then I think the art of being a good leader coming out of this period is going to be to all your points is get out of here to here, start asking questions, start connecting, make sure they are taking holidays, because a lot of them would have been working, alarm goes off at 7. To my point before, I'm normally having brekkie, then I jump on the train, get on the train about 8, get into work. Alarm goes off at 7, which normally does. What's the inclination now is to walk from the bedroom to the den. So you've probably arguably done 4 hours a day more work. So I think my recommendation to the leaders is ask questions, get out of here, get into here, understand what people have been going through, and then make informed decision off the back of that.
Yeah. Because there is a danger that leaders could look at this and go, oh, they've been on a bit of a break anyway, so let's come back in and work real hard now. That's an easy assumption to make because you're not visually seeing people work. So that's a big danger as well, assuming that people are at home and they're loving life and it's been actually a breeze, where most conversations I think we're having, it hasn't been that way for many.
Yeah, again, the next question probably helps to answer the question we've just had before. It's from Julie. Do CEOs need a coach themselves? need a coach
Why
themselves.
don't we go? Why don't we go to you? You're the coach.
Well, the first thing I'd say on that is it's a lonely spot at the top, and I think there's this misconception that the coach or the CEO knows everything. So that misconception, which is completely false, lends itself to say, well, if I know everything, I don't need a coach. But it couldn't be further from the truth. I think the really good leaders I talk about have really good self-awareness. So what aren't I good at? And we see it all the time, don't we? We see a lot of technically very, very sound leaders, and they're really good at, building a widget or putting a wheel on a car, whatever it might be. But in terms of their overall leadership, they do need work, don't they? Because it's not something, and I hear you talk about all the time, it's not something you learn going through the corporate ladder, is it? So it's certainly something a coach can help you with.
Yeah, 100%. I think I like the funny matter of fact is if you've got a partner, generally your coach ends up being your partner because you just want to, talk about what's happening during the day. And the reality is your partner might have had all the other things going on in their day, and they obviously don't have the expertise, but you have some inside information a lot of times you can't share potentially with the rest of the group to scare the hell out of them that, the business is at risk or this challenge came up, and then you can't talk about it with everybody. And so when you can't talk about it with everyone, you just internalize it, then it festers and it becomes a bigger problem, or you talk about it with your wife or your partner or whoever that may be. And so having that external sounding board is not just, at first and foremost, it's the ability to get that particular item off your chest, which is an important factor in any psychological relief system, is talking openly and honestly about what your challenges are. But having someone who really understands business or understands coaching or leadership or overseeing things will give you guidance or something that you're not aware of, because they're not in the emotion of the actual thing that's causing the pain or the challenge. And that's a really important factor. I think, for me personally, and just my engagement with you, Ruzi, I'm now a big believer that if you don't have it, it's a huge weakness as a leadership, as a leader, to not have a coach or someone that you can rely upon. And maybe all four of us, even this Culture Couch Live is an opportunity for us to talk about stuff openly and just get different views on things. And that's so important.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to put words in both Emil and Murph's mouth, and I'm going to say I'm presuming we all believe that the CEOs needs a coach. But Murph, why don't they then? If we all sort of have that consensus, what are some of the roadblocks for the CEO to not have the coach?
Is this question without notice, Ruzi? Or why don't they? Well, the reason they don't is sometimes that they don't think they need one. Let's face it, you get people who think that they're are we allowed to swear on the Culture Couch? Shit doesn't stink.
No.
So that that they're borderline narcissistic. I've got all the answers. Blah blah blah. And so there's that. Sometimes people are just busy, and so they're so busy doing it that it's really hard to take a step back to actually find a coach, because finding a coach is actually quite difficult.
It's a job. It's a job in itself. Finding
someone that you trust, that you're going to share that, as Warren says, quite confidential information sometimes, is a really hard thing to do. And then you've also got to weigh up the technical versus the people side of it. So what sort of a coach do you need? Do you need someone that's going to provide you with expert advice?
Yeah, so
a lot of the CEOs we work with, they'll use one of us for a part of it, the people part of it, the culture part of it, but then they'll use somebody else, and they might use someone else. So I think, why don't CEOs and executive team leaders, by the way, I don't think this is just about CEOs. Why don't they get coaches? Well, for a whole range of reasons, but the long and short of it is I think they should. And the one thing that I think is really important, and when I'm working with CEOs, is just having someone come in from the outside that can just listen to the way you're speaking. So often the key thing that I'll talk to people about is watch yourself talk or your team talk.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, because in your own head, You start thinking it's not going as well as I want. This isn't working. They're not working, and you start to create stories that actually aren't true.
Yeah.
So having someone just come in and say, "Hey, listen to yourself talk there. I don't know if it's as bad as that. Just reframe the conversations in your head. It can just change the way you're looking at the world."
100%.
Yeah. Em, I want to pick up on something that Murph said then and take it even down a level further, because the question was about the CEO and Murph, you took it to the exec team, but why not even lower on the org chart? Because 100%. I think, again, pick up from what Murph and Woz were saying, there's different skill sets as you're going up the chain. And is it technical? Is it behavior? Is it, what is it? But I think in order to build that skill set, I would suspect you would encourage someone to get an external person as soon as they can, as they're going up through the organisation.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common conversation that we have about the lack of leadership development and coaching inside the corporate space compared to sport. I think we've even chatted about the picture of the Herald Sun a couple of years ago with Essendon and the 20 people in the box. Well, 4 of them were working on the game, but the other 16 were developing the next generation coming through. It's just not even existent at all sometimes in corporate. And then all of a sudden, a good performer's chucked into leading people and having to coach. And then, we might come in and be a support for them. And we might ask them, you've got to conduct a one-on-one with your team members. And they're like, well, what's that? And so now they're starting from ground zero, but they're now in a position where they've got to behave like a coach. Like even, maybe if you look at sport, I think of Michael Voss and James Hird, how they got thrown into the Wolves, and they're not set up for success. So I'm a massive fan. I remember the day when I started getting my first coach, it was just so much better. I remember the analogy in my head was like playing table tennis against the wall. When you have the table tennis wall where it's like that, and you keep hitting and the ball was my thought, and the thought would just keep coming back to me. And I'm like, this is making me go crazy. To have the ball go across to the other side of the net and have someone come back with a different one, you're like, that's a great perspective, because we don't see our blind spots. And that really was massive, I know, through my journey. And even I love it when Jez comes into workshops with me and gives me an external perspective on what I'm not seeing I'm doing, and vice versa. It's just absolutely critical, I reckon, anyway.
Yeah, and I think the self-awareness piece is really important, to know what type of coach you want. And then, Murph, to your point, trust. I mean, trust is huge, isn't it? There's no point in hiring a coach that you don't trust, you don't think it's got the technical skills to do it. So don't have one for the sake of having one.
Yeah.
But find one that you really believe in and you really trust in. I think that'd be a reasonable way to wrap it up.
And Reezy, just before you wrap it up, I was just going to say, I think the other thing that's really important is to use your executive team as a CEO. So we talk about leadership teams or executive teams, but don't just have it. And again, we spoke about this last week, you reminding how important it was for me to hear you talk about executive teams as teams. So lean on the people around you, and they will also help coach you and help share the load and come up with better answers. So use your executive team. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
I think it's a great point, because and also go on, Em.
Yeah, I think that's massive, actually. Like, say if you're a leader that, might not be the best communicator, but you wanted to get across a passionate message, but you're pretty introverted, but your intent for the meeting was to share your passion and your enthusiasm for the topic or whatever it might be. There's nothing wrong with leaving the meeting and going to a confidant leader and saying, hey, how did that come across? Did you feel my passion there? And they can give you feedback on what worked and what didn't. That's absolutely critical. And I think it's not played enough. It's not taking advantage of the fact that you've got a team around you to help you get better.
Yeah, and I know one thing that worked incredibly well for me, and it's not always the case to be able to have them, but having a great mate, like Ross Lyon as an assistant coach, John Blake as an assistant coach, because they knew when you were faking it. They knew, to your point, Emil, they knew when you were being real, and they were able to call you out, and they were able to. So it wasn't so much about your self-awareness, because they could actually see it in you because they knew you so well. So I'd encourage I'd encourage that also. That
Yeah.
it's got to be. It can be someone that knows you really well,
Yeah.
and if you can get them on your exec team, Murph,
Yeah.
and get them part of the team, they become your biggest fan, but also hold you to account as well, and are really good at self-reflection and getting everything moving forward. So, as usual, boys, well done.
That was great.
Weekend on. What's races? Anyone into the races?
All day hunting tomorrow, Derby Day.
I was
We
going
want to
to
give a tip or anything?
No tips. Don't fry bacon in the nude.
before we go, Reezy, I just wanted to check where was. Where are you driving to, mate? Or have you got a new job
Catch live. Live means wherever you are, whenever you are. It's another day off today.
Is that a sunroof, or have you painted clouds on the top of your car there? What's going on there, mate?
It's one of those screenshots, behind you. Yeah, screenshot behind you, over your shoulder. All right, boys, have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for listening in to Culture Couch Live.
Boys.